In the early 1800s, along the dramatic cliffs of Lyme Regis on the southern coast of England, a young girl from a poor family would forever change our understanding of the Earth's ancient past. Her name was Mary Anning, and this is the story of how she became one of the most important, yet forgotten, pioneers in the history of science. Born in 1799, Mary's life was anything but ordinary. Her father, a cabinet maker, supplemented his meager income by selling fossils he found on the local beaches. From a very young age, he taught Mary and her brother Joseph how to spot these curiosities, a skill that would define her life. After her father's tragic death when she was just 11, the £10 a month the family received from parish relief was not enough to survive. So, Mary took to the cliffs, armed with a hammer and a keen eye, turning her father's hobby into a desperate means of survival. It was a dangerous job. The cliffs were unstable, and landslides were a constant threat, but Mary was determined. Then, in 1811, at the tender age of 12, she made a discovery that would stun the scientific world. After her brother found a strange-looking skull, Mary spent months carefully excavating the rest of the skeleton from the cliffside. What emerged was a complete 17-foot-long skeleton of a creature never seen before. It was the first complete ichthyosaurus skeleton ever found. The scientific community was baffled. They called it a fish lizard, a monstrous hybrid that defied all known categories of life. The discovery was sold to a private collector and eventually made its way to London, causing a sensation. But while the fossil became famous, the young girl who found it remained in the shadows. The scientists who studied it barely mentioned her name. This became a painful pattern in Mary's life. A few years later, in 1823, she unearthed another incredible creature, the first complete skeleton of a plesiosaur. Its long neck was so bizarre that some prominent scientists, including the famous French anatomist Georges Cuvier, initially dismissed it as a forgery. They couldn't believe such an animal could have existed. It took months of debate and detailed examination before the scientific establishment finally accepted her find as genuine. Again, her discovery was groundbreaking, but the credit went to the male geologists who purchased and presented her fossils. As a working-class woman with no formal education, she was barred from joining the Geological Society of London or publishing her own scientific papers. She was an outsider, an expert whose knowledge was mined by others, but whose name was rarely cited. Despite the constant struggle for recognition and financial stability, Mary's passion never wavered. Her fossil shop in Lyme Regis became a must-visit destination for geologists and collectors from all over Europe and America. They came not just to buy her remarkable specimens, but to learn from her. Mary wasn't just a collector. She was a self-taught scientist. She had an unparalleled understanding of the local geology and anatomy. She was the one who taught the so-called experts how to properly excavate and prepare fossils. She made detailed drawings and notes, and she was the first to discover that the strange stone-like objects known as bezoar stones were actually fossilized feces, which she named coprolites. This discovery alone provided a new window into the diets and behaviors of prehistoric animals. Her list of incredible finds continued to grow. In 1828, she discovered the first pterosaur skeleton found outside of Germany, a flying reptile that challenged people's imaginations. She also identified several important new species of fossil fish and ammonites. Her work provided crucial evidence for the emerging theories of extinction and the great age of the Earth. Before Mary Anning, most people believed the world was only a few thousand years old and that every animal God created still existed somewhere on the planet. Her fossils of strange, extinct sea monsters helped to shatter that worldview, paving the way for the revolutionary ideas of scientists like Charles Darwin. Mary once wrote in a letter, "The world has used me so unkindly. I fear it has made me suspicious of everyone." She was often frustrated by the way wealthy male scientists would build their reputations on her work while she struggled to pay her bills. She sold the ichthyosaur for just £23, a sum that barely kept her family afloat, while the fossil itself became priceless. Yet, she persevered, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a deep connection to the ancient world buried beneath her feet. In her later years, some geologists began to acknowledge her immense contribution. The Geological Society of London, the very institution that wouldn't admit her as a member, granted her an annuity, a yearly payment, raised by its members in recognition of her work. When she died of breast cancer at the age of 47, The society even published a eulogy for her, an honor previously reserved only for its male fellows. It was a small, posthumous nod to a giant of the field. For a long time after her death, Mary Anning's name was largely erased from the history books she helped to write. School children learned about the male scientists who named the dinosaurs, but not about the poor, uneducated girl who found the proof they existed. But in recent decades, her story has finally been brought back into the light. Statues have been erected in her honor, books have been written about her life, and she is now celebrated as a foundational figure in paleontology. Museums are now updating their displays to give her the credit she was denied for so long. Mary Anning's legacy is not just in the incredible fossils she unearthed. It's a story of resilience, of passion against all odds, and of a brilliant mind that saw a world no one else could. She was more than just a fossil hunter. She was a true scientist who, armed with just a hammer and her own intellect, chipped away at the rock and our ignorance, revealing a deep history of life on Earth. A true pioneer of science, remembered forever.